Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 30th of April. And joining me on this edition, Steve Withers.
Puny God.
Ed Selley.
Well then, son, you've got a condition.
Kaz Harlow.
Hulk. Smash!
And Mark Botwright.
Monkeys?
Yeah. Kaz hasn't quite got the gist of this yet, but here we go. I think everybody can guess what the movie is now. Right, so before we start, there's no podcast next week. I'm sorry to break that to you, but it is bank holiday on the 7th of May, so we're having the bank holiday off, so there's no podcast on the 7th. The next podcast is the 14th of May, Monday the 14th of May. So that's that out the way. I don't know how we're going to discuss Avengers Infinity War without giving away any spoilers whatsoever. We're going to have to do it without giving away any spoilers. That's coming up later, people. It's going to be interesting to see how we manage to bridge that one. Current competitions, Ed, why don't you tell us what they are?
Right then. You can win Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle on Blu-ray, which closes on the 7th of May. So you'll need to start thinking about getting a shift on for that one. Is still a competition to win an Arkham AVR 390 AV receiver. And you've got until the 30th of May on that one. Then there's a Relicoustics T5i subwoofer, also closing on the 30th of May. And your friendly reminder-ish that all competitions are open to eligible AVForums members resident in the UK.
Excellent. And any previous winners?
Stone the Crows, yes, there are. Well, is, rather. Areco won Wanda on Blu-ray. So go them.
Excellent. I was wondering how you're going to pronounce that name.
Carefully. Carefully, I think that's the phrase.
Yeah, okay. So, Mr. Botwright, what have you been up to since we last spoke to you?
I can't remember when we last spoke. I've largely just been tinkering with bicycles and things like that.
Things like that.
Things like that. I've largely been swearing at bicycles that I've been trying to fix and can't do so.
Okay, and is this for you to use or somebody else to use?
No. This is for me to use. This is I had the great idea of picking up a little 24-inch wheeled BMX to scoot up to the gym on, and then I realised that he's kind of mashed in some sealed bottom bearings, and I've been wailing on it with a hammer for a week now. Okay,
so instead of taking the BMX, you're going to run up to the gym instead, then?
Or I could just decide not to go.
That seems like the more likely option.
Yeah. I foolishly downloaded one of these little apps on my phone, which is, 30 days to abs and that kind of thing. And the damn thing sends me notifications if I don't do it.
Sounds like the rock clock.
Yeah, it's horrible. And what's worse about it is it's not even a good app. It's like one of they've done like text to speak. It's like a speak and spell trying to, kind of encourage you, Weird. It's like trying to, getting encouragement from that. It's like trying to crack one off to the talking clock or something.
There's your strapline for the week, I suspect.
I'm so glad that you said the rock thing nice and slow there, Ed, because that could have sounded like something completely different.
Well, yeah. Enunciation is all important, I find.
And we haven't spoken to Kaz for a while. So, Kaz, what have you been up to?
Working hard, reviewing hard, watching some great movies.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah,
it's far too professional,
isn't he? Yeah. Anything else in between the movies?
Movies.
Occasionally you sleep, I think, but I don't know when.
Well, I got a trip down to Bournemouth in there, and it was perfect timing for last weekend.
All right. Okay.
And actually got some sun, which, considering we had snow a month ago, and there's some ridiculous forecast for snow this weekend, I don't know how I had it, but kids got some sandcastles and got some sun.
You were down in my neck of the woods.
I didn't know it was your neck of woods.
I should have asked Botwright's crib.
Yeah.
His
you
manor.
have to pay like duty.
Well,
only insider.
You've got to pay the Botwright massive to get in and out of Bournemouth, otherwise they beat you up.
When they notice you there.
And happy 40th, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I've got days to go. So I don't know what to do to make the most of the last few days of my 30s.
Look up one of those sites that says things to do in life before you're 40 and try and fit it all in.
It'll suggest things like parachuting and skydiving, when really I'm more likely to just watch a review disc and go to work. Maybe on the motorway for a change.
Blimey.
What are you going to watch?
Living the dream.
You're going to watch films on the motorway?
No, I don't do that. That wouldn't be safe.
Well, it wouldn't be safe if you're the one driving.
Yeah, I've got a whole pile of new stuff coming in. Got Den of Thieves to check out, which I've heard is good, even though I still scorn at it for being a rip-off of Heat, even though I haven't seen it. All the Money in the World. Let's not talk about Kevin Spacey. And a whole bunch of other things.
You play Spot the Reshoots and see if you can tell any difference.
Yeah, it's going to be that's going to be interesting writing that review without talking about that.
I thought Honest Trailers handled it perfectly in their Baby Driver
Yeah,
trailer.
it was really funny.
Really good. Right, who else have we not spoken to? Steve, what have you been up to, Steve?
Oh, I've been, just usual stuff, cinema, work, and was in Edinburgh on Wednesday. So I'll say hello to Ken Benjamin, who's also known on the forums as Son of Sam. It's up at his place. He's got himself a brand new 75-inch ZD9, which I thought looked absolutely spectacular. He's moved his 75-inch Samsung into the kitchen, which is unusual. I don't think many people have got a 75-inch TV in their kitchen with a full surround sound setup as well. So,
right. So is this your new thing where you're just going to visit forum members?
Yeah,
just
forum members. Actually,
he's just going to turn up at the door
on the 22nd of May, visiting Nigel Henry, who is the guy that Ed and I bumped into. He crashed the Clarity Booze Up party at the Bristol show. So I'm over to his place on the 2nd of May.
So people listening to the podcast, if you hear the doorbell going, it could be Steve standing at your door.
Yeah. You're going to get the live show.
It's like through the keyhole. But
I was going to say, it reminds me more of that segment on Noel's house party or something. Steve turns up at your house.
Hints and tips for getting rid of him, you know.
I'm glad you're going to visit all of our listeners. So I hope it's because we are small listenership.
Oh well, we've only got another 3 people to go then.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right, so is that everybody done? Have we gone round everybody?
Well, you haven't spoken to me.
All right. Sorry, Ed. You did the competition. Sorry.
I did competitions. No, I've been having an interesting week. So that's been a lot of fun. But I have squared a few things away. I've been obviously reviewing quite hard because we're fast approaching the end of the month and there's still quite a lot to produce. Yes, I'm just wondering how to fit stuff in. And then obviously I'm off to Munich for the show in the not too distant future as well.
I forgot about it. So that's Munich high-end show. You're going to do a show report for us. What do you think is going to be the big product this year? Because I think last year, did they not have a 50-inch subwoofer or something like that?
That was quite spectacular. There should be some
50-inch subwoofer. Is that like the big thing they had at the beginning?
It looks like the
Future?
beginning. Yeah, there's a photo of it in the last show report. I'm glad to see that you read it.
No, I didn't read
it. He only proofed it, Ed.
I may have proofed it. I have no memory of it now.
To be honest, I think for a moment of seriousness, I suspect we're going to see a goodly quantity of all-in-ones at anything from £1,000 to £5,000 from a variety of manufacturers, because they've all noticed that Name in particular is back ordered for many, many weeks on theirs, and I imagine that they're not doing too badly out of it. And I think they're all looking at that and going, it might be time to have one of those ourselves. Was my guess for this one. And there'll just be lots of shiny things. Once again, I'll lose all understanding of value.
Yeah.
You know, someone will point and go, this is our product, it costs €10,000, and I go, oh, actually that's really reasonable. And
you need to worry when you start doing the man maths to say, oh, I could actually afford that.
Well,
for a year.
Yeah, mercifully, that's not on my list of priorities at the moment. But it's as I say, it should be an interesting month in all senses of the word. So
excellent. Well, the reason there is no podcast next week, it's not just the fact that it is a bank holiday, but I'm on my way down to Donington for Simply
Monsters of Rock.
Sorry.
Monsters of Rock.
Not quite.
Oh, it's not called that anymore, is it? Is it Download or something it's called these days?
God knows. I've never been to a festival ever. But I'm going to Donington because we're having the Simply Mustangs UK, The Gathering.
So you're going to a car festival?
So it's a car festival. There's going to be 280 Mustangs.
Bloody hell.
Are turning up for this. There's going to be a convoy of us heading from the northeast of England down the M1. And we're picking up people as we go down So it should be.
It's going to be like what that bloke in Fury Road, and there isn't going to be a petrol station with available unleaded anywhere between Durham and the Simply. Is it still the Simply Sausages Raceway? I can't remember. It used to be sponsored by Simply Sausages.
Was it Simply Sausages, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think it was. So that's Saturday the 5th of May. So if you are near Donington, it is
stay away.
Well, no, it's the
and
the
you
historic.
Wonder why there's no petrol in the surrounding area.
That is a reason, but it's the historic meeting, but it's also Simply Mustangs UK, the gathering. We trying to get the most amount of Mustangs together. In the UK, so it should be quite good.
Do you draw straws to see which one of you is going to be holding the flame-throwing guitar on the big rig on the way down?
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Assembled outside of Detroit.
No, which one's dressed like Lord Humongous?
Yeah, no, it should be good. I'm really looking forward to it. Seeing that many cars, and we're talking everything from a 1964.5 up to the latest 2018 models. So, and everything in between. And these guys mod the cars like you've never seen. So if you are local, and you've got nothing to do on the Saturday, I'd highly recommend you come along for the weekend and have a look at that. It'll be a spectacle to see.
No, I just said it would be really worth seeing if Phil goes in a hockey mask and a jockstrap, as in Lord Humongous.
All right, okay.
It wasn't just a weird sex thing. Wearing
it wasn't just a weird sex thing. Some weird sex there, but not purely weird sex.
Shall we move on and talk a little bit about AV then?
Don't see why.
We'll be back in a sec with Hard Road News. Right, so hardware news, and let's start with some TV talk. Why not? Because they're a bit slow this year, the TVs, which is
awful this year.
Kind of strange, Steve, because there is a World Cup happening this year, and I would have thought that, given where we are now, and when this podcast goes out, May starts, I would have thought most of them would be in the shops now, but they seem to be delayed for some strange reason.
They seem to be playing what I can only describe as a version of televisual chicken, where they're all driving each other as fast as they possibly can, waiting to see which one swerves first.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's been strange. You know, you'd think by now we're nearly May. Normally by now we've seen the majority of the flagship models from the major manufacturers, and actually right now we've seen all of two. So very strange, and that's not because it's not like just us, but no one's seen any TVs yet. And it is weird because, as you say, in 7 weeks the World Cup kicks off, so we're really close now. And you'd think they'd be a bit more, but I guess they don't want. Maybe perhaps they're worried about going too early. You know, they want to have it just right. It's all about timing, I guess. You want to get your TVs, maximum coverage right before you run into the World Cup. But by the same token, people will need to buy them, order them, get them delivered, set them up. So you're not going to do it.
Plus, you got 2 bank holiday weekends in May as well, which is normally the time where everybody goes out and makes their silly purchases, isn't it? So
no, it's a weird one. But they are beginning to, at least they're beginning to announce some prices. They weren't even doing that until the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so, I mean, strangely, LG, who for a long time have been at the forefront of reducing price of OLED and bringing it to a wider market, this year they seem to be about £500 more expensive.
Yeah, they found themselves in the weird position of being the expensive one rather than the cheaper version. Because I guess to a certain extent, that's because the other manufacturers' TVs, so I'm talking here specifically about Sony and Panasonic, to a certain extent, their TVs, the FZ852, is it? No, it's FZ802, 802, and the AF8 are kind of the same as last year, aren't they? They're just they're very similar to last year, but with different cosmetics rather than different features. So I guess they kind of carried across their pricing. LG's TVs aren't massively different from last year. There are a few new features on there, but they're essentially the same TVs, although they've got the Alpha 9 processor rather than the Alpha 7, which is essentially last year's. But yeah, I'm looking at their pricing. So just to go through the pricing, because they've announced it now. We kind of guessed it because some retailers have been suggesting it anyway. But the B8, which is essentially last year's TV, although it's not exactly the same as last year's TV because it does have black frame insertion, which was not a feature on last year's TVs, but it's essentially the same though. That's going to be $2,499 for the 55-inch and $399 for the 3999 for the 65 inch.
Now you see, I thought that would have come in at
1999.
1999. Yeah, that's where I thought it was going to come in.
Yeah, given that you can buy a B7 for £1.5, £1,000 more seems like a lot of money for a TV that is basically the same. So that's a strange pricing. I'd have thought 1999 would have been, at that price point, I think they would sell like gangbusters.
Now there is a thing starting on the 2nd of May that I've read about on various sites, which is a £500 cashback.
Yeah, I think there's going to be immediately they're going to drop the prices. Maybe not officially, but via the retailers, there's going to be cashback. So, which would make sense. That means then you are getting it for $199, and the C8, which I guess is the sweet spot as far as this new range goes. You're looking at currently to £3,000, $29999 for the 55 inch, and again, I would have expected that to be more, $2,499, which is where the competition is priced. And then the 65 inch is $4,499, and the 77 inch is $7,999. I've got to say that's not bad. £8,000. I know it's a lot of money, but for a 77 inch OLED, I've got to say that's quite a nice bit of price in there. But the other two seem a bit toppy compared to the competition. And again, as you say, Phil, if they do a cashback and they get down to 2.5, then that's more likely in line. And I've got to say, if you're looking at an OLED TV this year to buy, your choices essentially are primarily you're going to be, as it currently stands, the Philips 9002, which Mark's got, Mark Hodgkinson's got, and was a competition prize not so long ago. That's available currently. There's the AF8 we just mentioned coming, and the FZ802 from Panasonic, and then there's the C8 from LG. And of those,
there's another Philips model as well, though, isn't there?
There was one coming. It hasn't come out yet. Yes, there is, because it was announced. It was they gave it a different, even though it's actually
the 800 series, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a 9002, but for some reason they've given it a different model number. So it's a 65-inch 9002 basically,
right.
But they've given it a different model number, even though it is identical television, which made no sense to me whatsoever. But that's what they did. But I've got to say, of those TVs, the C8 is the one that attracts me the most for the same reasons we were talking about last week, funnily enough, which is that WebOS is just such a bloody good platform. Compared to Android, for example, on the Sony, and also, although I think the Panasonic one isn't too bad actually. Their platform's simple but effective, so I like that. But obviously, the C8 also gives you Dolby Vision, which Panasonic doesn't, and and the AF doesn't currently. And based upon what I've been reading recently, God knows what's going on there, because it looks like their recent Dolby Vision update's been a complete disaster in terms of affecting TVs in other ways. I've had quite a few friends of mine who've got Sony's ringing me up going, what the hell's going on? So, yeah, of those TVs, difference? I'd be going for the C8 for those reasons.
What's the difference this year between the B8 and the C8?
Right, so the C8, it has the Alpha 9 processor, and the B8 has the Alpha 7, which is essentially the same as last year's, although it does include, as I said, black frame insertion, which wasn't a feature last year. So the C8 basically adds black frame insertion, which some people have been asking for. It's got improved motion handling, and it has a decontouring feature, which has been popular on Sony TVs, and LG have now added it to the C8. The C8 also has a superior version of the auto calibration feature. There is going to be auto calibration on the B8 as well, but the C8 version is slightly different, and that goes from C8 up to W8. So the auto cal feature, I've got to say, is something that looks really interesting from the point of view of the fact that it works at a hardware level on the TV. So it doesn't go through the CMS or through the menu system like all the others do. This one actually operates directly on the hardware, making an interesting approach. I know that LG have been working very closely with Spectracal on this, so that's something I'm going to be really interested in.
It looks really impressive. Although it does raise the question, Steve, what are you going to do for the other 3 hours that you're there calibrating somebody's TV? Because it'll take minutes to do it, really.
It will take minutes. Well, I mean, it will take a bit longer than that, but yeah, it will certainly be a lot quicker. I guess what it means is you can do a lot more. What it does allow you to do is really accurately calibrate a lot more picture modes than you could have before. So things like game mode can be calibrated, which wasn't necessarily an option in the past. So I guess you can just do more things in the time you're allocated, and obviously drink a lot more coffee and
biscuits, and
that's always the solution. End up about 20 stone at the end of this. So yeah, in answer to your question, Mark, there's basically the processing is different. But after the C8, it's the same all with W8. So once after that, you're just paying for cosmetics, basically. So the E8 is currently at 55 inches, 3499, and 65 inches, 49999. and then the G8 is only available as a 65-inch model, and that's 5,999. And then the W8, which is the wallpaper TV, that's $8,000 for the 65-inch and $15,000 for the 77-inch. So I got to say, if you're looking for big screen OLED, that's 7,999, and I'm sure that will drop in price fairly rapidly over the next few months.
Here we go. So Steve, you've got $8,000 in your pocket. You're going to go and buy one?
No, I haven't got $8,000 in my pocket, and I don't think the wife would be too chuffed with a 77-inch telly. But I've got to admit,
actually, if you could put the 55-inch in your kitchen, then
yeah. But actually, if you think about it, we've been reviewing projectors and installing the virtues of our projector. But to get a decent projector, you're looking at minimum $5,000 anyway.
Yes.
And if you want a 4K native, you're sort of starting around the high six, early 7,000s. So you're around about the same price point. So
depending on the size of your room and your viewing distance and everything, a 77-inch OLED that could be really good.
with those black levels in HDR and so on. Yeah.
Then they got the HDR and Dolby Vision support, and you got all the built-in every single. One of the things I love about WebOS, apart from the fact it's really intuitive to use, is also you've got Netflix with Dolby Vision, Amazon Now TV, and then also all the catch-up services, all available, really easy to get in and out of. So that would be a nice feature to have too on a big screen like that. Yeah. So I've got to say, I think they could see that being very popular.
The app as well on the LG is it Dolby Atmos enabled?
Yes,
it is.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Because I just found that on the Xbox X.
Yeah, that's quite
cool. Yeah, I hooked it up and got to say it sounds really nice. I mean, really noisy when it's playing a disc, but but no, the Netflix doing Atmos with their series stuff, really good.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Apple get their finger out and sort out the Atmos upgrade for their Apple TV, because that'd be quite nice.
Well, obviously talking about Atmos, you see how I linked that in there? That was so professionally done there, really. I'm chuffed to myself with that one.
It was until you pointed it out.
But it was so good I had to point it out. Right, so you've been reviewing a Dolby Atmos speaker package, Steve.
Yeah. This is the Focal Sib Evo Dolby Atmos package. It's a 5.1.2 speaker package. So in the box you get 3 Sib Evo speakers, which are kind of small satellite style speakers, which you use one for the center because they can rotate them on their stands as well, so you can have them standing upright or standing on their side, and you can also move the badge, which is handy. So you can have one for center, 2 rears, and then it also comes with 2 Sib Evo Dolby Atmos speakers, which are basically the same as the Sib Evo normal speakers, but they have an upward firing driver built into the top. So the forward firing driver and tweeters are identical. So you've got a nice matching balance, tonal balance around the room in terms of all the drivers and tweeters are the same. And then there's these 2 upward firing drivers at the top. And then it comes with a subwoofer as well. The what do they call it? The Cub Evo subwoofer. So you've got yourself a 5.1.2 system. Now you can, if you want to, of course, expand that. That you can buy the Sib Evos as a pair. So you could have a 7.1.2 setup, or you could buy a pair of Sib Evo Dolby Atmos speakers, and then you could have those at the back, and then you could, or sides, and then you could have a 7.1.4 system. So depending on your receiver and what that's capable of, you could do that. But the package itself comes as a 5.1.2 setup, and I think that's a good starting point for most people. And I'm surprised more manufacturers aren't doing this actually in terms of these Dolby Atmos packages, because most people aren't going to want to put speakers on their ceilings in the lounge. It's just not practical. So upward firing drivers are the solution, depending on what kind of ceiling you've got. Of course, you do need a reflective ceiling for it to work best. If you've got a big vaulted ceiling, you're wasting your time. But for most lounges, you've got a flat, reflective ceiling is going to work quite well. And I do have to say, in my experience, it does actually work very well in terms of creating an overhead experience. And I'm comparing this to a home cinema where speakers are genuinely, there are speakers mounted on the ceiling. So I can compare it to a full, proper Atmos system and say that, yes, that is a similar experience. Maybe not quite the same, but certainly it's in the ballpark, considering the ease and simplicity of installing it. That's the definite advantage. So what it means is you can fit it into your lounge without depending on the ceiling. The drivers fire upwards, bounce off the ceiling, and then down at the listening position. One thing I will point out, though, is this isn't really designed for large rooms. It's definitely a system aimed at the smaller room, partly because the upward firing drivers are a fairly acute angle. So your ideal position to sit when using this system would be about 3 meters from the screen, which isn't that far back from a TV. A lot of people sit much further back from their televisions, but the angle of the reflection from the ceiling means that that's the best point to sit in terms of getting that overhead effect. But I've got to say, the package itself works really well. They're nicely made, well designed, and I think you can get them for just under £1,000. I think for just over £1,000, this is a really cost-effective and effective in terms of performance way of delivering a Dolby Atmos experience in a normal lounge without too much hassle and too much in the way of wiring and mess in the lounge. It's a very tidy solution. One thing that does annoy me though, I don't know why they've done this, but on the back there are holes basically where you put the speaker cable into. It's like you press a button to open it up, put the cable in, release it, and it holds it in place. The holes are really small, so you basically have to you got to use bordering on telephone wire. It's got to be
in the past, can we be clear about this? In the past, I have got annoyed about this as well. But people who have lives outside of this industry have gone, exactly what cable do you think people are going to be putting in it?
Well, let's put it this way. The cables I already had were way too big. So I had to, dig out some old cable I had that was really thin to use. It was a bit of a ball ache, frankly. But yes,
you see, this is the same reason that I get periodically annoyed at how hard certain things are to rebox, but normal people don't rebox them. It's all about a sense of perspective, because a number of rivals to Focal are just as bad, but equally the sort of cable you're likely to encounter. I mean, if someone's really gone to town on using the £2.50 a meter cord cable stuff, for example, that's still going to fit. It's only lunatics like ourselves who may or may not have a hose pipe or two kicking around that's going to matter. But you've got to have a sense of perspective.
Purely as a warning in case you do have thick cables that you're going to be bugging. But if you're buying it from scratch, and I guess that's who this is aimed at, someone who wants to install a 5.1.2 system in their lounge relatively painlessly, then just make sure you get some relatively thin cable to go into the holes. But that's my complaint. Otherwise, context, that sounds weird. Otherwise, though, I've got to say, I think they're nicely designed. They're very good. They sound great. They create a nice, effective sound stage. Good overhead presence, which is important when you're talking about Atmos, and also positioning of sounds around the room. I really like them, and I think for them to just I think they were 1099. There was the original price, but you can pick them up for I think 975 at the moment, 975 at the moment. Shop around. And that's a pretty good deal for a 5.1.2 package, I think. You put it with a 7-channel AVR, £400 7-channel AVR, and you've got yourself a pretty good system for less than you'd pay for one of the more expensive Dolby Atmos soundbars, for example. So, I really liked it. My only complaint, as I said, is the little holes at the back, but otherwise,
it's interesting because a lot of people I've spoken to some other people who've spent some time with this speaker package, and they don't normally necessarily. I don't find them agreeing on much, but I haven't heard pretty much a bad word said against this thing. It does genuinely seem to be if you like, a single unifying force of speaker packaging goodness. So that's quite impressive.
It's also relatively. I don't think it's quite. I don't know if it's unique, but certainly I haven't myself experienced any other 5 Dolby Atmos packages as in an all-in-one solution in a box. I mean, you can buy upward firing drivers to put on top of your existing speakers. I don't know that Kef, for example, is it the R50s? For that very purpose. But I think I'm surprised more manufacturers aren't looking for an all-in-one box solution. You just get all the speakers out, set it up, and away you go.
I guess there's this nagging fear that you might just feel that you're doing yourself out of sales where you're not selling to Atmos capable customers. The fear of missing out, if you will, by including, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't, but it makes sense in my own crappy head.
I should also point out, although they're called Dolby Atmos, they've the names in the title of the package, and the speakers are called the two speakers with upward firing drivers are called SIB Evo Dolby Atmos speakers. You can of course use these speakers with DTS:X as well. It's not just for Dolby Atmos. I mean, the upward firing drivers were developed by Atmos, Dolby. It's part of they did a lot of technology involved in creating these overhead effects, but it works just as well with the DTS:X soundtrack. So don't think it's just for Dolby Atmos. It isn't just for Dolby Atmos. It works just as well with both audio formats. And I like the fact that you can expand it too. The fact that you could buy a couple more CBVOs or a couple more CBVO Dolby Atmos speakers if you wanted to do a full 7.1.4 system in your lounge, then you could. That option is always there for you, and it's relatively inexpensive to do that if you need to at some later point. So overall, I think Focal have delivered a really cracking little package here. Very impressed. Ed, is that text from Phil? Is it saying he disappeared or something?
Hang on, sorry. I haven't seen text. What's going on? He's waiting for. Oh no, Phil wants you to segue effortlessly. But given we're now talking about segueing effortlessly, I don't think we've segued effortlessly. I think it might be fair to say that we have failed to segue.
Giving him a look behind the curtain. Just us flailing about desperately.
The fourth wall is both broken and studiously ignored. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. You see, I thought you'd read that because you stumbled over your sentence there when I sent that.
I saw it come up, and then I thought you'd said something about. I don't know. I just read it.
He can't read and speak at the same time.
No, I thought you were saying you were disappearing off to for someone because someone was collecting the laser projector.
Right. Okay. So anyway, we're going to talk about a laser projector.
If you haven't already guessed.
Smooth.
Yeah, you failed on that one, Steve. Right, so another laser projector, like buses, they all come along at once, from Optoma. I'm not going to say too much about it because the review is going to be up on the site next week, or this week, as you listen to the podcast. The UHZ65, it's very, very similar to the UHD65, which we've spoken about on the podcast. It's a 4K DLP. The difference here, and the main difference here, and the reason why it's getting a recommended badge is it does a few things that the other 4K DLP projectors can't do. The main one that is contrast. There's a bit more contrast here because it's using a laser light. You have a bit more to play with. The blacks are actually black instead of a dark grey colour, which is normally the downfall of DLP technology. Certainly under £10,000 worth, you're kind of looking at that issue. And the other one is a wider colour gamut. Because it uses colour wheels, the other 4K DLP projectors are basically restricted to Rec 709 colour, so HD colour. Because this uses a laser, it has a little bit more leeway when it comes to colour. Now, it doesn't do the whole of DCI-P3. They say they'll do 80%, and it's about 80% of DCI-P3. The thing is that, although it's restricted, it can't get completely out there to DCI-P3. What it does cover, it tracks pretty well. So actually, in terms of performance, when it comes to HDR and wide colour, it's a big step up on the other 4K DLP projectors out there, especially the more expensive Acer 9800 that we looked at, the V9800, which was around about the same price as this Optoma at $5,000. The other 4K DLPs are probably about half the price. So in terms of value for money, it becomes a difficult choice because once you hit the $5,000 mark, especially in the laser projector world, without a laser, if you're looking at bulb technology, the Epson and the JVC are a lot better when it comes to 4K HDR, wider colour gamut, black levels, shadow detail. So it becomes a bit more difficult to recommend the Optoma in that company. But as a laser projector, and obviously the other laser is the Epson 10500. Yeah. Which is laser as well, and it does the full DCI-P3 colour gamut, and it also does HDR really well. So if you're looking at 4K DLP projectors in isolation, this is the best one we've seen so far. It's a big step up. It gets 80% of DCI-P3. The black levels are decent. They're still not great, and shadow detail still doesn't exist, but it never will with a DLP. And it's the same if you're looking at a £30,000 3-chip DLP, they're the same when it comes to shadow detail, or if you're looking at a £60,000 to £100,000 cinema DLP projector. It's the same technology. They can't do shadow detail particularly well, especially just coming out of black. That's where it suffers. So if you're looking at that in isolation, it's the best 4K DLP we've seen. If you're looking at in terms of the competition, there are better projectors out there. Although they are bulb projectors, and you will need to replace the bulbs, and it won't hold the calibration as long as this one will. So there's pros and cons to each technology, but if it was my choice, I think I'd still be going bulb at this price point, or the Epson 10500. But it's a good crack at the whip from Optoma. It's a good crack at the technology, and it looks promising for DLP's future, to be honest. So it was quite a surprising product in that respect.
Do you find even though the colour gamut isn't as wide as some of the projectors you've seen, that because it uses a laser light source, it's got slightly purer colours?
Yeah, but it's like I said with the Sony when we discussed the VW760, and that review is coming. It's been written. It's just it's waiting to be published. The colours look really nice on this, although it does cover that in terms of DCI-P3. Magenta is towards red, which means that skin tones and faces are a little bit rosy here and there, and certainly red. There is a bit of a red push to the image, which is unfortunate. But in terms of brightness, in terms of colour purity, I watched a lot of Lost in Space on the projector. And normally, if it's a series like that where I'm going to put a lot of viewing into it, like that or Westworld or whatever, I'll wait till the JVC's back set up again and wait on that if I've got a projector in that I don't think's up to it. But I was more than happy with the Optoma to watch most of that series. I think I watched about 6 episodes on the projector. So yeah, it's good. The problem with DLP as well is rainbow effect. Now, if we're going back 10, 15 years ago, I could not watch a DLP projector without feeling nauseous, without feeling like I was going to throw up because of rainbow effect. For people who don't know what rainbow effect is, it's basically colour stripping or striping at the side of high contrast edges, that kind of thing. So when you've got high contrast scenes, you will get flashes.
Where it's moving across the screen.
When it's moving across the screen, that kind of thing, or if it's a high contrast, like a black and white scene or something like that. That's normally where you see this. And if you move your head from side
wave
to
your
side,
hand in front of the
wave your hand in front,
in front of your face, does it?
Yeah. Although you don't sit and watch a film waving a hand in front of your face.
I wouldn't recommend that.
But if you want to see it, that's normally how you can see it. Now, there's been vast improvements with the technology over the last 10, 15 years. We've now got, faster colour wheels, RGB colour wheels. I very, very rarely see rainbow effect now, and I used to be really, susceptible to it. I used to see it a lot. I don't see it as much now, but one of the downfalls was using the laser and obviously upping the contrast, and the contrast on this was 7,785 to 1, so it was a 218 net peak white on a 10% window. The problem was I saw more rainbow than I normally do, because certainly watching stuff like Lost in Space, where there was white of interiors and so on, and the camera moving, and you're getting image highlights and so on, because it was graded in HDR, that series. I saw quite a bit more. The other problem I had with this projector was my new favourite test disc, which is Blade Runner 2049. New old Las Vegas scenes, where it has that mist, that orangey, yellowy orange mist. Lots of posterization in the image there, which was a real shame, and it wasn't the source on this occasion.
No,
it was
definitely not.
it was the projector which was adding that in, and I just to make sure, I did try a couple other players, because the Panasonic can be can introduce that with some displays that can't handle a full 12-bit signal. So I did try it with the Xbox One X, and I also tried it with the Samsung K8500 player I have here, and it was the projector that was adding it. It's just, it can't cope with scenes like that, which was a bit of a shame. And it was mainly noticeable light around the light source in that scene. So the sun, which is hazy, you get lots of posterization around it, lots of rings, lots of gradation rings and so on with the same colour. And it was in some other scenes as well, like when he goes to meet the Dream Maker. Again, it was a high contrast background, and there was lots of posterization there because there's lots of hue changes in the background, which was white to sort of creamy white to
standing in a white room, basically, isn't she?
It is, yeah, but there's obviously different degrees of white depending on the lighting, and it was those changes in the lighting where you did see changes. And the other thing was the tone mapping. It was trying hard to bring detail in the black levels, which didn't really work for certain scenes, like Oblivion interrogation scene, where I've actually sat with a colorist and grader for that scene and watched the scene through, and he's told me how it should look. And we used that as a test scene, and it was far too light. We were getting too much detail. It exists in there because the camera doesn't suddenly decide that it's going to just basically hard mask the rest of the detail below that point. It's there, and it's in the disc and so on. But if you set your gamma right, or if the tone mapping is correct, it'll show the scene as it was intended during the grade. Too much detail in that. And again, another interrogation scene in Blade Runner with Wallace and Decker, where their faces, it's a technique that Deakins is used a lot in his films, especially like silhouette and silhouette fights and stuff in Bond as well, where things go completely black, so you can't see the emotion and so on. Whereas it didn't go completely black because it was trying to bring out too much detail. So it kind of ruined that scene a little bit as well, because it wasn't tone mapping correctly there, where the faces should go into blackness, and it didn't do that. So apart from those little things, great little projector. It is a little bit toppy in terms of price, but if it's a 4K DLP you need, and where you'd use a DLP is in a normal living room where light coloured walls, where you can close the blinds or close the curtains and make the room dark, but you're going to get a lot of reflections from the walls and so on coming back onto the screen. You wouldn't put a JVC or a Sony into a room like that, or an Epson, because you wouldn't get the best out of them in such an environment. Whereas DLP projectors are absolutely perfect for that kind of environment, and they have the light, and the raised black floor doesn't impact as much, because you're not losing the selling point of the projector, which is the selling point of the JVC and Sony's and Epsons, which is the black levels and shadow details. So yeah, decent enough.
And that's $5,000, you said, yeah?
$5,000, yeah. So yeah, it's the best 4K DLP we've seen yet. That's the positive I'm getting here. It's on the right track, and it looks like laser technology could make DLP a bit more handy for complete Batcave cinema rooms and that kind of thing. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see where that'll go in the next year or so, because it's at $5,000 now. I suspect it'll get a lot cheaper, and I suspect give it another 2 or 3 years, and I think bulb projectors could be a thing of the past. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. So that's the Epson projector. The review will be up on the site, like I say. It is end of the month, so let's do our end of the month thing, which is go to Ed for his album, vinyl release, and playlist of the month.
Yes. It's been a quiet month, both in terms of what I've been listening to and in releases. But album and vinyl release are one and the same. And it is from a band that's been around for a fair old amount of time. It is the Manic Street Preachers, who have released a new album called Resistance is Futile. I don't know if that's a Star Trek reference or not. But I was very pleasantly surprised by this album. And I know I sent the link to Phil, so I'll be interested to see what he thinks of this. But I feel that it's not a greatest hits album because it's all new material, but it covers off lots of the different styles and production and presentation that they've used throughout their very, very long past.
Apart from two major omissions for me, Ed, which was Generation Terrorists and Holy Bible. They don't cover those styles here. And yes, I get what you mean about it being a greatest hit. That's my problem with it. It sounds too Mannix, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah.
So it's too safe for me.
Well, there is an element of that. I mean, I'm prepared to give it a huge amount because I just think that opening track, People Give In, is gorgeous. And I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to it, and it is a lot of care and effort has gone into how it's been put together as well, which is why I would also say it's an excellent candidate for the vinyl release this month as well. It's every now and again I want my bands to go all out, give me something new, and I'll evaluate it on that. Maybe it's a state of mind, but at the moment, perhaps this month I was looking for a comfort blanket, and I have just enjoyed it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not all out brilliant. I think that the Hillsborough tribute, Liverpool Revisited, I think it's very heavy-handed and a bit naff. Actually, no, I'm going to rephrase that. I think it's incredibly naff.
Yeah.
But that's by the by. I think their hearts are in the right place anyway. But I just have thoroughly enjoyed listening to it.
I've got to say, I know Steve is a big fan of the Manics as well. I mean, I'm a
I
bought
the album when it came out on CD the day it came out.
I loved it. Actually. Did you? I
loved it.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's just, for me, I think that's their period where everything must go and so on, where they won the Brits and they were the best thing since sliced bread, round about the millennium. That's where it changed for me. I think the only other decent albums for me personally is Lifeblood. Since then, I think everything else has been really hit and miss.
I don't know. I think the last two albums, Rewind the Film and Futurology, were really good because they were definite. They took a totally different approach with those two albums. Like, for example, on Rewind the Film, I think they deliberately avoided trying to use any electric guitars, so that was obviously a big difference for the Manics. And I really thought Postcards for a Young Man was a really good album. Actually, I really enjoyed that, even though it was very poppy and a real effort to try and make something commercial. And it didn't do very well, but I thought it worked really well. But I see where they were going with this, and like Ed said, I think there was a certain familiarity to it that I found rewarding ultimately.
So it's going to I think we can take from that it possibly divides opinion slightly, but it is nonetheless my call for this month. Now that's in part because, maddeningly, an album which was supposed to have appeared this month still hasn't, and that's the new one from Churches with a V. There's been another single, but it was supposed to be the end of April. And here we are at the end of April, and we still haven't heard it. I have every suspicion. That's going to be the difficult third album, but based on the fact that pretty much everything else they've ever produced has been sensational, I have high hopes that that's going to be a good one. So we'll see where we go from there. But at the time of recording, I haven't heard it, so I don't know.
I do like Churches. I think they're really good. So I'll look forward to hearing that one, Ed, when it eventually comes.
When it eventually appears. And then playlist. I'm not going to apologise for this one. There is a... on Tidal, I
thought you were going to burst into song there.
No. I'm just waiting for my bloody computer to give me back the page I'm supposed to be looking at. I just sustained whilst it was going.
I thought we were going to get the AVForums podcast, the musical.
No.
Once there is a feeling.
There is on Tidal Kids Corner. It's obviously aimed at children, and my son and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with music because obviously he's 4 and doesn't necessarily want to listen to the things that I do, and thus he regards me listening to music as me getting in the way of doing something that he wants to do. And if you happen to be in the same position as me with that, you might want to have a look at Kids Corner on Tidal, because he and I actually sat and listened to some music, and it was nice.
Will told me he thought the Manics album was shit.
Well, I know he's very, very unsympathetic towards rock. Although he does quite like Nine Inch Nails. Make of that what you will. So yes, if like me, you are having difficulty in your children don't necessarily appreciate the business of sitting down and listening to music, you might find that that's quite helpful. And Steve will like it because the very first track is You're Welcome from Moana.
Excellent.
Okay, so that's Ed's Picks of the Month, and that's it for Hardware. We'll be back in a sec for another long segment with movie news and reviews. Okay, so movie reviews. There was a little film came out this week at the cinema, which I went to see. I was expecting the screen to be absolutely empty. It wasn't.
So packed.
It was absolutely packed. I went at 4:30 in the afternoon thinking, well, might be some school kids or whatever, but it should be all right. It was packed out. I'm kind of glad I got my tickets weeks ago, to be honest, because busy and noisy until the credits rolled. So we're talking about Avengers Infinity War. We are not going to spoil this film, because this film lives or dies on you not knowing what goes on, going in fresh with this. So we are not going to spoil it whatsoever, which is going to make this really difficult, because it's the first time that I think all of us, bar Mr. Botwright, have been to the cinema on the same day to see the same film, which is a first.
Unprecedented.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Ed first, because we don't normally get Ed's input into things like this, but remember, Ed, it has to be spoiler free, so we're not going to spoil things for people. What was your feelings?
Right. One thing I'm going to say, I am not invested in the Marvel. I'm maybe even less invested in the Marvel universe than you, Phil. And despite that, I was able to I'm not suggesting for a moment that the plot is up there with, Memento or something like that, where you do need to pay attention. But I did not find it too much of a disadvantage that I haven't seen Black Panther and various other ones in the great scheme of things. And I still enjoyed it. obviously there's so many people in it that in some regards it has to move through like Game of Thrones. It's like, who was that again? Oh, it doesn't matter, and so on and so forth. But no, I thought it was thoroughly enjoyable, and it has some moments of it does all the things that you realistically expect that Marvel has been demonstrating such a lightness of touch with for so long. There are moments of outright humor. There are moments genuine emotion. I wouldn't necessarily go that far. There are moments of reasonable emotion to it.
Did you get a moment where the whole audience had a very quick intake of breath?
Sort of. Yeah. Except I'm such a wearied cynic. There was a moment it's like, but it's like, yeah, I'm sure that
the lady sitting next to me grabbed my hand at that moment. I think I got more of a shock at that, her grabbing my hand, than anything else. But that's the first time I have ever experienced that in a screening. That reaction to something. It's first, and yeah, even though I'm not as invested as Kaz and Steve are in this, and there was a lot of characters in there that I didn't know. And if anybody's thinking, well, I need to see this film or I need to see that film, you made a good point there. You don't need to have invested much time in this. As long as you got a vague idea of who the characters are, you'll do well. You'll understand what's going on, or you'll be able to keep up with what's going on, because there are so many characters in here, and they don't spend that much time. And I think the main ones where they do spend a lot of time are the more popular characters. So you're going to know who they are, or you're certainly going to have seen one or two of the films that they've been in. For me, I thought it was incredibly brave movie making until I realised there was a part 2. Because I went into this movie not knowing there was a part 2. And once I knew there was a part 2, I thought, maybe it's not as brave as I initially thought. But it still is actually brave movie making and storytelling, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would go. I found it moved. I didn't feel any part of it dragged. And yeah, I thought it was genuinely entertaining.
My arse was numb. It was a quick enough film.
Well,
but
you just need a comfier cinema, then, don't you? Or a bigger arse. I don't know whichever one.
Oh, no,
whichever way round this issue.
I'm trying to reverse that one. Right.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so I think the amateurs have said their bit now. So I think we need to hand it over to the experts when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So let's go to Kaz. Kaz, again, spoiler free, but what was your feelings?
Yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. It's a real feat that they've managed to put together this movie. 19 films in. We've seen 18 films and it builds up to this. And the 20th film in this chronology will be part 2, because everything they're going to do in between is not going to be set before part 2. So it's all built up to this point. And it's never been previously attempted, and no one's ever come anywhere close to it. I mean, you look at what DC have tried to do to emulate it.
DC could just pack up and off at this point,
yeah,
can't they? They've just been wiped. They've just told DC, but give up, stop doing it. Do your TV series, because they're actually doing some really good stuff on TV, but your films are crap. They're not even close to this. They're not even in the same ballpark as this. Forget it. Just stop. I mean, who gives a damn about Aquaman coming out in December? Couldn't care less. This just wipes it. Honestly, I came out of this and I thought, if I was a DC executive right now, I would blow my brains out.
Yeah, they jumped on it too late, and this is it's a 10-year in the making project. And whilst I can understand that people are going in having not seen all of the films and having not picked up all of it, I think there is something to the experience of having seen all of them and getting all the little references and getting in on all of the conversations. They pack it. It's 2.5 hours, and they pack it full of throwbacks to everything you've seen before. And that's why when for some people it's not an emotional experience, but for people who've been along the whole ride, some of the things that happen, it is an emotional experience. These are people you've followed throughout that entire period. And I agree with Phil. Ultimately, ultimately some of the decisions made are made with the knowledge that there is another film on the way.
Also, I think some of the decisions are made with the knowledge that there's 2 more films to come, although, as you say, that take place before Infinity War, are obviously going to have a direct impact on the sequel, on the whatever it's called. I haven't got a title yet, but Avengers 4. That's going to influence that film, and I guess that's why they deliberately lined it up this way.
Yes,
because there are a couple of characters that are missing, which would surprise me in the film.
Yes,
but as a film, it works on 2 completely separate levels. You can go into this film like Phil and Ed, not being that familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and still completely enjoy it as a cinema experience. And it almost stands alone as a standalone film as well, even though clearly it is setting up a second film, and they were shot back to back, and originally they were called Part 1 and Part 2. And I know it's not the case anymore, but it's obvious that there's a second film coming. But if you've invested the last 10 years in those 18 films, it's also a completely different experience where, as you say, Casual, richly rewarded for your time spent in that universe, and can enjoy it. I can't believe that a 2.5 hour film went by so quickly. I could have sat in that cinema for 5 hours. I could have sat through Part 1 and Part 2 and been perfectly happy without a numb bum or anything like that. I thought it was brilliant filmmaking on every single level. It ties up, it brings together plot points over 18 films, which is no mean feat in itself. It's watchable if you haven't seen all those films, but it's still even more enjoyable if you have. It somehow managed to balance 60 different characters without feeling crowded, and giving all the main characters at least some time in the on screen and their moments. It's funny but dark. It's brilliantly staged. The production values are off the scale. It must have cost a fortune.
300 million, I think.
Yeah, they're going to get that opening weekend. I have never seen the cinema as busy, because when I was coming out, the queues to get in as I was coming out, I've never seen that before. Never seen it there.
And a cast. I mean, the cast that's assembled in this film is just unbelievable, because of the time they've spent building up all these characters and hiring really good actors. I mean, it's just unbelievable. As a piece of cinema, I don't think we'll ever see its like again. Getting that many quality actors into one single film, building up next year over 10 years. Well, I'm counting the next film as part of this one big long film, really. These 2 films are an achievement as a piece of cinema, as an achievement in cinema, unparalleled, and I don't think we'll ever see it like again, because as you say, they've spent 10 years building up to this, and what I can't believe is how they've managed to keep the quality level. I mean, I was thinking, well, have there been any really bad Marvel movies? And My Man 2 is not great. I think they dropped the ball a bit there, but there was a writer's strike, and there were issues with that film. And Incredible Hulk was the second film they did, and they did it with Universal, and it was kind of, they were still finding their feet. And most people don't like Thor: The Dark World, although I don't mind it as much. But on the whole, the quality level has been staggeringly good. And some of them have been absolutely brilliant, and I still think this might be the best, even though Civil War and Winter Soldier are brilliant films.
Marvel on a bad day is DC on a good day. Marvel just have an ability to consistently do good quality movies. It's a bit like Pixar or Disney releases. Marvel have managed to maintain good. And then sparks of great. You have Winter Soldier, which really blows people away with the tonal shift. And then you have Guardians, where no one thought that they could have such a, like a musical comedy. It's fantastic tonally. But you're right. I mean, the way they pull it together in this.
Well, having balanced things like phenomenal. Guardians and the tone of those films in this film, and they still manage to do that while still having a much darker. It's got darkness to it, but it also has a light touch. There are some really laugh out loud moments in the film. Guardians, retain their character even though they're inside an Avengers movie, basically. That you thinking about it, you think, oh, that must have been really, to try and balance that, both as the directors, and the Russo brothers do a blinding job on this, but the writers too, to try and balance that, to try and bring everything together.
It could have been a major flop. It could have been. I'll tell you what it has done for me. Not being a big fan of the MCU, and not necessarily not being a big fan of the MCU, just it's never really attracted me in that I must see this movie and I must see that movie. Having seen this, I am going to go and see the ones I haven't seen. I'm going to hunt them out and watch them.
Yeah, I mean, you got Ant-Man and Wasp coming out in July, and then in February, I think it's February next year, it's Captain Marvel, and then in May of next year you have it's the second Avengers movie, whatever they're going to call it. And obviously, the reason they haven't announced titles is because I think the title will be a bit of a spoiler, which is why they haven't announced it yet. But yeah, I'm definitely going to. I thought, right, so by the end of this year, I'll have all the Marvel movies up to Infinity, up to Ant-Man and the Wasp. Actually, I'll have them all on disc. So basically, before I go and see Captain Marvel, I can watch the whole lot. See Captain Marvel, and then in May, you go into the second part.
No, I'm not saying that I'm going to go out and buy the 4K UHD Blu-rays here.
Well, no, you can get the.
But I'm going to catch up with the ones that I have missed, and I noticed a few of them are on streaming services as well, like Netflix. So there are means for me to go and catch up with things that I've missed, and I think that there is a better payoff to be had if you've seen these other movies from Infinity War. But saying that, don't let that put you off going to see this. If you haven't seen Black Panther, or if you haven't seen any of the recent stuff, don't worry. I think the only one where you might be a little bit confused is if you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok.
Because it actually starts.
It starts right at the end of that film. Yeah. So maybe try and see that before you go and see it. That could be a little bit confusing. But for the rest of it, absolutely, you don't have to have seen it.
To be fair, I hadn't seen Ragnarok, and I was just about able to keep it all under understanding. Yeah. You know, it's. As I say, it's a nice, a really impressive piece of filmmaking. It sets a pretty ferociously high bar for the summer blockbusters.
Yeah,
let's put it like that. So, you know, and looking at the trailers running before the film, it's like, you guys have got your work cut out. So, yeah.
Also,
if you all watched it in packed cinemas, was there anyone who left before the end credits finished?
Yes, there was.
Yeah,
I suspect
but quite a lot of people were sitting there right to the very end. And you do have to sit there right to the very end.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went away and came back, went and got a coffee, came back 10 minutes later. Or
did you know there wasn't going to be just after the credits?
Yes.
The initial credits bit.
I knew it was right at the end, and I almost thought, you know what, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to go right there.
No, you need to stay.
And then I came back, and I was glad I stayed. Although, like Phil, I did know it was made as a two-parter, but I didn't know it was part one. I didn't know it was so part one.
Part one.
Yeah, and I think, for example, you know, I scored it 9 out of 10, and got a lot of people telling me it should be 10 out of 10, and I get that. But
it's a 10 out of 10 movie, but it's only a 10 out of 10 movie if part 2 is good.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've been down this route before with the Matrix films, and I think, you know, it's like, it's all good and well, but there's a plan, and I don't know the end of that plan, and I need it to be good, and I have a lot of faith in these.
Yeah, I've no doubt it's going to be good. Yeah. I think it's going to be amazing actually, because I've been, you know, based upon what happens in that film, I'm thinking, okay, and I know some of this on-set footage that's been, you know, photographs, people in costume, that sort of stuff, and given some of the things I've seen and what they were wearing, I think they've got a really great idea up their sleeves. I think it's going to be really good, and also good villain. Any film lives or dies by its villain.
Yeah,
and Thanos was a fantastic villain because he's got an interesting plan. I mean, you think like, well, okay, actually, his philosophy, I can get on board that one.
Oh no! Don't say that. You've made comments like that in the podcast before.
It's one of the first times that Marvel
he's a good villain. Off. He's a good villain, and they built a villain up. You know, built him up for 10 years. So, you know they've got their work cut out when Thanos turns up, because you know this is not going to be an easy ride, and that's important. I think, you know, one of the reasons that Black Panther was good because it had a good villain. With a good agenda, an agenda you could buy into.
Same as Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Spider-Man, yes, exactly, cracking villain again.
Yeah,
the hero's only as good as his villain. And if you've got a weak villain, and a lot of the Marvel movies, unfortunately, if they've had one fault, it's been weak villains. This is not that film. They've got a cracking villain in Thanos.
Yep. Okay.
And yes, it's beautiful. Do you know what? I'm gonna go to my standard autist point. I will listen to it in isolation. In a film with visuals that good and a number of acting performances that are that good. I feel that the score is merely satisfactory and is just doing its job. I don't feel compelled to hunt it out. That's the only. It's not. It doesn't stand as an absolutely barnstorming example of the genre. That's about it.
That's a fair point, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think if we go any further, we're going to start getting into spoiler points. So I think that's the right moment to wrap this bit up. We will come back to it probably in a couple of months once people have had a chance to see it, and we'll come back and we'll discuss some of our feelings then. Hopefully it'll be one that Kaz can come along and join in as well, and we'll have another look at the same as what we do with Star Wars. You know, the initial reviews are spoiler free, then we'll come back to it and discuss it in a bit more detail. So a couple of months and we'll come back to this one. Right. So like we say,
Next question's pretty easy to answer.
Yeah, so end of the month, favourite films of the month. We've answered that one.
Yep.
Yeah. I did go and see Ready Player One as well. I've been to the cinema more in the last sort of 7 days for various reasons. And that was all right.
I've enjoyed everything I've seen at the cinema this month. I've got to say, I mean, I've seen Ready Player One twice. I really enjoyed The Rock and Rampage. I thought that was fantastic. As a stupid movie, brilliant. And then obviously Avengers as well has been absolutely spot on. So I've enjoyed my cinema this month.
Quiet Place was this month as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't seen
I
it
haven't
yet.
seen that. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, that's tremendous high concept, small scale filmmaking. You know, Krasinski from The Office, Jim from The Office, and he turns his hand to turning in a really nice little horror.
And he married Emily Blunt. There is no justice in this
See,
world.
he was talking on Joe Wayne Norton about he was going through customs at Heathrow, and they're going like, "What are you? You're an actor?" And he goes, "Yeah, been anything I've seen?" He goes, "Well, I was in the American version of The Office." And he went, "God." And he goes, "Who's your wife?" Because Emily Blunt. She married you.
Yeah. Obviously, we mentioned all this. Mr. Botwright, have you been at cinema this month? What's been your favourite film of the month?
No, and I'll plead the fifth because I can't say anything.
Okay. I wanted to include you. I wanted to be inclusive here.
Feel left out, darling.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is anybody brave enough to release a film this Friday, Steve?
Nothing. Well, there is a film out. The only major release on Friday is I Feel Pretty, which is an Amy Schumer movie where she's
getting absolutely slated for its
well, it looks
premise.
terrible on the trailers. It's basically
It looks like it doesn't look like it's breaking any new ground, and yeah, her slow. At this rate, she's going to do a Tom Green and do a female equivalent of Freddie Got Fingered.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, she's Amy Schumer. She's playing Amy Schumer. She knocks her head, and then when she looks in the mirror, she sees a supermodel, basically, rather than Amy Schumer. So it's Amy Schumer thinking she's a supermodel, but then acting like Amy Schumer.
She's fast becoming kind of almost. She's moving into female Adam Sandler territory, I think.
She is very quickly, which is a shame because she used to be really good.
Didn't Jack Black already do this film?
Yeah,
Shallow Hal.
Yeah.
Well, he did it with a better cast, I'm afraid. So, yeah.
And he was Jack Black.
This is also true.
That's right.
Sorry. I'm on a bed at the moment, so I'm not sat
So I
upright.
Feel Pretty looks pretty unpleasant. As a film.
It does,
anyway,
and I'm surprised it's getting released given the present atmosphere in Hollywood. So,
well, it seems like a strange one, but I guess it's being buried, isn't it? Because no one's going to go and see it.
Yep, that's very true.
For the next 2 weeks until Deadpool 2 opens, it's just going to be Avengers all the way, isn't it?
Well, there you go.
Which I think is on the 15th of May. So Deadpool 2 opens in 2 weeks. So basically that's the next 2 weeks on Tuesday. I've already got my tickets for that. Looking forward to that. Actually, there's some good gags in that about. Because Josh Brolin plays Cable in that, and obviously plays Thanos in Avengers. He makes some jokes about Thanos and the DC universe.
I noticed there was a DC
it's really dark
in the
like
trailer.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm quite looking forward to that. But basically, until then, it's just going to be Avengers, isn't it? And everyone else has just definitely gone away for a bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. Disc of the month. This is going to be a difficult one for me because I only bought one disc, which I didn't realise I'd actually purchased until it turned up
Last Jedi.
Nice.
And I really don't want to give it best disc. I really don't.
By default, it has to be.
Yeah. But it's also the worst disc.
Best and worst disc of the month.
Yeah, for me anyway. Yeah, there you go. What about you, Kaz? I think you've seen a few discs this month.
One or two. It's hard to pick between all of them, so I'll go with the most recent best disc, which was Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. So for me, that was a little bit of a surprise. I'd heard good things, which I didn't expect from a sequel to the 1996 Robin Williams film.
It's like a sort of sequel / reboot, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well,
soft,
I mean, they
soft
managed.
Reboot.
It is exactly. Yeah, it's a soft reboot, but I mean, they managed to make it a sequel, but they obviously take it in a completely different, but the same direction. It makes sense if you see it. But it's again, it's a really high concept for what they've done to the cast.
Surprised me.
And surprise you.
It did. It surprised me that I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think The Rock is superb in it. Playing against type and against himself, and I think everybody else. When you consider that they're playing different characters in different bodies, fantastic, really good.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I find I compared it in an odd roundabout way to Face Off in my review, because actually it's quite interesting watching actors play other characters. In this case, it was like archetypes. But in the case of Face Off, it was watching John Travolta overact like Nicolas Cage, which was actually quite good fun. And in this, they managed to take 4 actors who you kind of know their style and have them play completely against type and send themselves up quite often. I mean, watching Karen Gillan try her best not to look sexy is hilarious. She's really going out of her way to find it hard to seduce men. I mean, it is hilarious. And Jack Black is the best I've seen him in like a decade. He's spot on. But you're right, The Rock, him as, he's Dwayne Johnson. He's this guy who's always tough. And in this, he does well to not only send that up, but actually be a little bit understandably vulnerable. And it works. It's fantastic.
It's got a really quite emotional ending too, which surprised me. I thought it was a brilliant film. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's also a great disc because it looks and sounds spectacular. So it would be my choice as well.
Well, we saw it in Dolby Vision.
We saw it in Dolby Cinema, and
Cinema,
I have a point of reference, so I can say with my hand on my heart that the disc replicates that experience as much as your system is capable of doing that. But the disc itself is top draw.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody else seen a disc they want to nominate for Disc of the Month?
No.
I didn't think
I did find my Cowboy Bebop Blu-ray the other day, which I was quite pleased about because I didn't know where it had gone, but I didn't purchase it. I merely found where it was.
And Mr. Botwright, anything from you? He's obviously had enough and gone home. Gone off. Right.
Sorry. Just trimming my moustache. No.
You don't need moustache wax to go with that.
I have actually.
Got a little moustache comb.
Yeah. Well, of course I have. I've got the classic.
It's not the same as his pubic hair comb either.
No, I've got the classic Kent Savant 81T.
There you go. For all you hirsute men and women, I don't want to be uninclusive. There you go. That's what you need to do.
And
mentioning Jumanji, it's out on disc this week, Steve.
It is, yes. It's out on Monday. So obviously, the reason I've seen it already is because I bought the disc from the States, and I guess Kaz got a preview disc. Is that right, Kaz?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's out, and obviously comes fully high recommended from all of us. Also out is Hostiles. No, I haven't seen this, but you have, haven't you, Kaz?
I have, and I actually ordered the American disc because we didn't get a UK Blu-ray, and it's not getting 4K release in the UK. It's another one of those titles they just dropped the 4K release for. So
it is coming out on Blu-ray in the UK, though, isn't it?
It is coming out on Blu-ray in the UK.
Yeah, this week.
But I liked it enough at the cinema to go with importing it, and it just landed. So I'm looking forward to revisiting that. It's not a perfect film, but it's very moody, well shot, and visceral Western. Yeah, it's got
Christian Bale. Right?
Christian Bale is on scenery chomping form, and Rosamund Pike's pretty good value for money in it as well. And it's got Wes Studi, who's you'd recognise him from being
Rent a Native American, basically.
Yeah, well, he's great. He's great.
He's the villain. Is he the villain?
Yeah, well, he's. I mean, there isn't a villain in this one. They're all jaded, but he's an interesting character. And
is he the main villain in Last of the Mohicans?
He is. He's Magua.
Yeah, he's great.
He's fantastic. So it's a nice little, probably unpredictable film with plenty of violent skirmishes that will surprise you. So I'm looking forward to checking that out and ranting about how we don't get a 4K disc in this country, which is becoming
quite common, bizarrely, annoyingly, worryingly. But speaking of 4K releases, also out on Monday is Gladiator, the new 4K release from a new 4K transfer of the original camera negative, I believe. So this should look fantastic.
Yeah, it should be. That's an absolute purchase. I'll have to go and pick that up on Monday.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see how well the effects stand up in 4K after all these years. Because that was 2000, right? So those CG effects were relatively early days. 18 years ago. Christ, has it been 18 years?
Yeah, you're an old man, Steve. Right, UHD Blu-ray releases. Anything else coming out on 4K?
A couple of announcements. Nothing major, but A Wrinkle in Time, which is the new Disney film that opened a few weeks ago. That's been announced already for 4K Blu-ray in the States. I'm hoping, I was going to say I'm assuming, but maybe not after what Kaz has just said. Hopefully the UK. Also coming out on 4K Blu-ray is Unsane, which is the new film from Steven Soderbergh, which interestingly was shot entirely on the iPhone 7 Plus. So what that's going to look like on 4K HDR, I don't know, but I'm kind of curious, actually. That stars Claire Foy, actually, from The Crown, and she's it's basically a thriller, sort of a thriller, as I say, was shot entirely on the iPhone 7 Plus.
Okay, good stuff. Right, so those listeners who were asking us for a feature-length version of the podcast, you're getting your wish this week. Absolutely. So to wrap up, and I think we're going to discuss quite a bit here as well. So it's the end of the month, so it's our TV shows of the month. I am going to make an executive ruling here that we cannot have Westworld. Because it's only one episode into the new season, and I don't think we can judge it yet. So that's why I'm making that rule. So that is out. It's only had one episode so far. Right. So favorite TV shows of the month. Okay, I'll go first. Lost in Space for me on Netflix. I thought it could bomb. I thought it would be. There was a good chance that it wouldn't be very good, especially with child actors and that kind of thing. I have to say, I'm 7 episodes in, so I haven't quite finished it yet. But I've seen enough to say I think it's definitely an 8 out of 10 for me.
Fair enough. I haven't got anywhere near it yet.
What have you watched apart from Westworld?
I have not been watching a huge amount.
What about the MasterChef final?
I did watch that. That counts as yes. I mean, that was interesting because we watched someone who basically hadn't put a foot wrong just overstep the mark and bin it right at the end, which was
totally binned it in the last one.
I mean, actually, on a MasterChef note, I was really saddened by that bloke dying on the London Marathon.
Because
he turned in some of the most. I mean, he was in the professionals, but I mean, some of the stuff he turned in was. In as much his absolute refusal to do any compromise or he couldn't have won the competition because it was his own person. But some of the stuff he did was just astonishing. It was game-changingly different, and in terms of the culinary world, I genuinely believe he is a significant loss because he demonstrated ideas on that show that were just. I'd never seen anything like it in years and years and years of watching that program. So a genuine shame and a lesson about marathons to us all. Joking aside, even if you are in very, very good shape, running 26 miles, it puts your body through things that it, under normal circumstances doesn't do anything like that. And it's not something to be undertaken lightly.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that the guy who ran 26 miles from the Battle of Marathon did die at the end of it.
He had been shot by an arrow. Additionally,
Actually, that would liven things up if we started shooting arrows at the runners.
Yeah,
it's a bit boring watching them go round and round and round.
Let's not go there, Steve.
In TV shows, can I just also continue to fly the flag for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is still bloody fun.
I'm going to catch up on that. It is on one of the streaming services, so I intend to try and watch it. I watched the first 2 episodes and didn't go any further with it, so I am going to give it a chance. Just while we're on you, Ed, Changing Gears with Aaron Kaufman, have you watched it yet?
No.
I wouldn't bother.
No, okay, that's fine. I did actually watch a couple of episodes of The Fastest Car on Netflix, which was bizarre, but it's a 5-minute show crammed into 40-something. But that has some interesting moments. There's some interesting bits of home-built hardware in that. So yeah, that's
the problem with the Aaron Kaufman thing is it's all trucks. It's all that kind of thing, and it's really boring. He hasn't got the personality to carry it, which is why when he was on Fast and Loud, it worked, because you had his character against the flamboyancy of Richard Rollins. So and that's back for a new series. I don't know if you've been catching up with that.
No, I've been nowhere near it, I'm afraid. I've been occupied elsewhere, if you will. But yeah, as I say, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Please, it's just if you like, it's a tiny. They have taken some characters which they took the time to establish at the start, and just do some lovely things, and the interplay between them is fine. And Terry Crews, I'd watch Terry Crews read a phone book, if I'm honest. He's my Dwayne Johnson. What a lovely, enormous, muscular man.
Am I right in thinking, is he one of the lonely?
Terry Crews isn't alone in the Lonely Island. No, he's just. But what Andy Samberg is, yes.
Right. Yeah, I thought one of them was. Yeah.
Yes. But no. No, I love Terry Crews, and he's very, very funny in that as well. They're all very very
he's excellent in it. He's very, very funny. They're all really good. It is a very funny show.
So yeah, there you go. That's what I've been up to.
Okay, I'll definitely watch it this weekend, and I'll let you know what I think next week. Right. Where are we going next, Mr. Botwright?
I haven't seen a great deal this month, but I've just been starting off watching The Alienist on Netflix, which sounded a bit sci-fi, and I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't. Apparently by a novel by Caleb Carr. It's got Daniel Bruhl in it, who was Nick Dowd in Rust.
Luke Owen?
Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning. And it's kind of end of the 19th century New York and a series of grisly murders and that kind of thing. It's kind of a bit like a kind of psychologist catching.
It's sort of Victorian Mindhunter, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, basically that's it. It's 19th century Mindhunter. First couple of episodes a little bit clunky. It tries to explain a little bit too much, but it's kind of brooding. It's got that very dark, and I mean literally, it's shot in a dark way, on using, I think it was Budapest to replicate New York. So it looks nice, and it's got some potential, I think. It seems quite a little bit grisly. You expect it to be slightly more gory, but it's only rated 15. And the only real shocking thing for me thus far is you see a new series on Netflix and it's only in HD. You're
what's going on?
Yeah, I've got to the point now where I'm expecting. I started watching it and I thought, hang on, the Dolby Vision sign hasn't come up on my.
Is it a Netflix made series though, or is it a series Netflix have bought in?
I've got a funny feeling. I mean, I'm not fully sure, but the way in which it's edited, that there are clear kind of punctuation points that intimate that there would have been adverts there. Yeah. So I'm assuming they kind of bought it.
I'm definitely on my list of things to watch. I'm quite keen to watch it. Just haven't had a chance yet because there's so much on bloody Netflix at the moment.
Netflix there's loads to watch on there at the minute. It's really
there's the documentary about female astronauts, the Mercury 13, which looks really good. There's a whole thing coming out, documentary series about Bobby Kennedy that I want to watch. Got to finish Lost in Space, which I'm really enjoying, like Phil. I've just finished.
They're building up a good little sci-fi catalogue, aren't
they? They are. They've just announced a new one they're doing with Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica, which sounds like it might be interesting. They just finished screening. This is actually screening on one of the normal network channels in the States, but it's been on Netflix in the UK, which is Black Lightning, which is a DC TV series about one of their characters, which has got, it sounds like a terrible title, but actually it's been a really good series. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So that will probably be my choice for this month because it's just finished. But I just started watching, Kaz might mention this as well, Legion is back, which is just bonkers, bonkers crazy, but fun. But Black Lightning is my choice for the month.
I heard that the lead guy in Legion, he as an actor, they wouldn't tell him what was going on in the show to give him all the more confusion.
So he's genuinely confused.
Yeah, because I spent, I mean, I love the show, but if there's one thing that took a bit of getting used to, it was Dan Stevens looking a little bit vacant and confused and speaking in an American accent. And it took a while to get used to because it felt very affected. Like he was just overdoing the whole, what am I doing here? But I can kind of understand it a little bit more if he genuinely didn't have a clue, because it's not the kind of show where you could miss an episode, let alone not be handed, the story to what's going on. And the second season starts. I mean, you'd think that they could he'd be a bit more aware. But the second season starts and Dan Stevens is back in a character going, what? And he's I mean, from the way they've plotted it, the way they've done the timeline, he's just sitting in a bar having a conversation where he clearly doesn't have a clue what is going on. And you're right back where you begin. And it's very enjoyable, completely audio-visual masterpiece in terms of throwing you into this crazy hallucinatory experience. And
modern / 60s world, isn't it? It's very strange.
It's really well done. It's the only TV or movie project which has kind of captured the astral plane, which is something that X-Men never really managed to get in touch with, because that's the place where Professor X used to hang with his buddies, where he could actually walk and do stuff, and he kind of projected his mind into the astral plane. I mean, the Legion actually goes there in the last season, so I've got high hopes for that. But I've actually been enjoying Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, that's really good too.
It's another one of those ridiculous shows where you spend the first few episodes of every season going, is this going to get good? Because it's a little bit weird now, and this one's in space, and it gets good, and you should know it by now. It always hits that point ever since season 1, where it interjected, I think, with the events of Winter Soldier, and the events of Winter Soldier, obviously a massive change up for S.H.I.E.L.D., and that directly affected Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And from that point onwards, it was a whole different class of show. And every season they managed to change it up like 4 gears at a surprise point in the series. And this one's done the same thing. They're in space. Who'd have ever thought they'd be in space? We're still waiting for the Fast and Furious franchise to be in space, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are there. So it's a lot of fun. It's very good.
Okay, so that's our favourite TV shows of the month, and that is it for the podcast this week, this feature-length podcast, because we're not here next week, remember, so we thought we'd give you a little bit extra this week, because we're good like that. My thanks to Steve Withers.
Not a great plan.
Ed Selley.
What's your secret? Mellow jazz, bongo drums, huge bag of weed?
Kaz Harlow.
That's my secret. I'm always angry.
And Mark Botwright.
I'll have that drink now.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums.com for the latest reviews, news and videos, and of course, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.